Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, I have a highly anticipated episode for you guys. This is the Colombia Roundtable. I have 7 esteemed Colombia enthusiasts here, all previous podcast guests as well, by the way, brought together for the first time like Voltron, and we're really excited for this episode. So I'll just do a quick intro, everyone individually, maybe just say hi for 10 seconds, and then we'll jump into it. So starting with Mr. BowtiedColombia. How's it going, man?
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm gonna talk with a little bit de Spanglish, porque ustedes saben que yo soy de aquí. Entonces, nada, it's a pleasure to see your views about Colombia also because you are not from here, but you maybe know more things that I am in some topics. So it would be a great podcast. So a pleasure to say hi to everyone.
Yes, sir. We had to get one Colombian on the podcast.
Yes.
And next is Eddy Quan.
Yeah,
Eddie, how
what's
are
up?
you?
Been good, man. I've been in Colombia since 2000 and 2010, I think. So I've been here for a while, and it's been really cool because I've seen the transition. Colombia's changed a lot, I think, since in the last 13 years. I think mainly because of social media, we can talk about later on. So I was fortunate enough to get here right before social media took off. Because I think that had a significant impact on the country. So Um, definitely feel partly Colombian now that I've been here for so long, and really excited to speak to you guys and learn your different perspectives about your experiences in Colombia.
Damn.
Well, I'll keep going around the room. Next, we have Mr. James Nuveen, Freedom Files. How are you, James?
I'm good, Vance. Thanks for having me again. Uh, for a little context, I've been here in Colombia for about 2.5 years, almost all of that time in Medellin, where I've bought property and kind of not settled down, but I really love this city and spend a lot of time here. But I've also explored a lot of the campo, as Alex will probably talk quite a bit about during this podcast. But yeah, happy to be here.
Good lead into our next guest, Alex, aka EcoInstant on Twitter, known as the Colombia Farmland Investor. That's kind of what I nicknamed you, Alex. So say hi.
I love it. Thank you. Yes. Well, I have been here since 2009, and I'm in Líbano, Tolima. Definitely a little more rural. But I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin, so I like this. This is kind of the campo lifestyle, and I like also what James said. We don't settle down, but we do get a little older. So been here for a while, and I would love to talk with all you guys about how Colombia has changed and whether that's good or bad, and how we think it's moving forward in the future. I'm excited about this.
James, before I continue, why don't you're from Wisconsin as well?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Milwaukee. Spent a lot of time in North Dakota, so all over the Midwest. Went to school in Ohio, but yeah, born and raised in Wisconsin, just like Alex.
Fellow Wisconsin Knights. Very cool.
That's awesome. You definitely just secured your invite to the coffee farm.
Yes.
Yes,
All right.
well, we would like to have people come and visit us. We actually have a guest right now from Australia. We're getting better at it. And so, one thing I want to get into after we get around the horn is like best and worst tourist experiences. I know James has some good ones bringing his friends down.
We will get to it. Keeping it moving just to get through our intros as fast as possible. Mr. Sean Hall.
What's up, Vance? Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I've been in Colombia for about 2 years as well, teaching English here. I fell in love with the country. My girlfriend's from Bogota, so I'm interested to talk to you guys all about that part of Colombia as well, and just to hear where you guys are all from and just all the perspectives. Give me a fun one.
And Sean's from California. Nate, are you also from California? Remind me.
I'm actually from New England.
New England. Okay, I'm totally off. Okay. Anyway, trying to build some connections here. Failed miserably. We'll keep going. All right. Last but not least, we have Mr. Sam Miller Life, one of the OG Colombia YouTubers, actually. Sam, how are
Thanks,
you?
man. It's good to be here. Looking forward to a good chat. I got to Colombia in 2010 on a motorbike, doing a Canada to Argentina trip. Fell in love with Colombia. Did about 5 or 6 laps of the country. Set up a real, like a short-term real estate investment company. In about 12 years in Colombia. Currently in Mexico, but Colombia has stayed in my heart. So looking forward to the chat.
Absolutely. So we got two Wisconsinites, two Australians, Sam and Eddie. Eddie, you're Australian, right?
Yeah, Malaysian by birth, but I did high school and university in Australia. I'm actually going back for a little while for personal reasons, but I'm coming back to Colombia probably in like a year or so.
Good stuff. So, cool group here. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Really, really exciting. As I mentioned, all previous podcast guests, and you could check out their individual episodes if you check the back catalog of the My Latin Life podcast. Without further ado, let's kind of get into it. And I thought maybe just an easy way to start would be to talk about things that you like about Colombia. What makes you excited about Colombia? What keeps you in Colombia? Why do you choose to live in Colombia?
The weather.
Choose your own weather.
Choose your own weather. Yes, that's exactly right. I'm about a mile high, and I could go up a little bit higher. It gets colder, go a little lower, and to me, the plains are unbearable. But some people like that. But yeah, choose your own weather, man. And for agriculture, year round, the bimodal rainy season, just 3 months of rain, 3 months of dry. It's just the greatest weather in the world. California is another one of those places, but amongst world weather places, this is one of the best, I think.
And it has it
I'm sure we
all.
could.
Like
Yeah,
if
I'm
you
sure we
want
could
to,
all
go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
name like a million reasons why we love Colombia. I'll throw out another one there in terms of the people, and Alex might resonate with this, but I have found the people to be, and I've lived in 7 different countries in Latin America, and I find the Colombian people to be my favorite by far. And the reason why I say Alex might resonate with this is because I find them to be really similar to like Midwestern people in the United States. And if you're not from the US, it's like traditional values, conservative, and I'm not talking politically speaking. I'm talking about like family oriented. People live with their families until they're 30, 40 years old. Um, People are extremely welcoming and friendly and warm, and I've fallen in love with that. Obviously there are some downsides. Obviously there are some not so great people, but the people that I have met all over Colombia have been that's been my favorite part about the country.
Yeah, man. The people, and I think it gets better in El Campo when you get outside of the big cities in
Yes,
los
exactly.
pueblos. I think
Mm.
it's better, and we could talk about cultures, but I think the Paisa culture is one of those really welcoming cultures. They're also kind of a hustling culture,
Yes.
which kind of resonate with Americans. To work hard. And so I don't think they're Protestants at all, but they have kind of a Protestant work ethic in a certain sense, but super welcoming. Yeah, for sure. I did
Alex,
not. I don't know. I feel like in the city it's less so. I mean, what do you guys say? You all live in the cities, so like, does that hold true for you?
I got a question for you, Alex. Do you find there's a difference between paisas from Antioquia and paisas from the Eje Cafetero? Because I think they're slightly different. I would like to hear your experience because you probably spend more time in both regions.
Yeah, I think totally. So I would say let's draw the line at like Caldas, Manizales. I think it's
Manizales,
like
yes.
kind of a watered down paisa. So like it depends. Some people really like paisa culture. Some people really get annoyed by it, and I think it's got both of those elements. So I think if it tends to grate you a little bit, the Caldas and South is a little bit of a watered down version, a little bit of a calmer version of it, and so I think it can be less intense hustle culture. Like I'm gonna sell you something, however I
Yeah,
can. You're gonna buy this from me, whatever price. So I don't know. I think, and I also think elevation has something to do with it in culture. Like Paisa culture has something to do with being high up in the mountains. They're not as lazy like people say, like down in the plano. It's really hot in the day, and so they can really only work a few hours in the morning, a few hours in the afternoon. So most of the day they're in the hammock drinking beer. They got those big beer bellies. Um, so I don't know. I think the paisa culture is nice. Now, not to go against the rola culture, but
Yes,
I prefer it to Bogota. With that caveat, that it can grate on you sometimes.
yeah,
I want to
So
add.
that's one of the
I
things. Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
I love Colombia as Colombian because what you say, Alex, is that it's like a union of several countries in one country. Because, as you say, there are different paisas, there are different costeños also. I am from Santa Marta, but it's very different from Barranquilla. It's different from Valledupar, Cartagena. We are all different, maybe because I don't know. Colombia is mountains, is different weathers, different, I don't know, infrastructure that make us different. So that's the reason, because I love uh, Colombia. Like James said, it's the vibe, the different people in the same country is very
Yeah.
great
I would
for me.
I would add some context to that as well. When you
Yes,
see how Colombia is divided by three branches of the Andes Mountains,
exactly.
then you go back 20 years ago, pre-internet, pre-smartphones. You've got like one or two news channels. You've got bus rides, 12 to 18 hours to go from Bogota to Medellin or to Cali or to the
Exactly.
coast, wherever it is. So you had just a really more intense isolation in all these places around Colombia. And that's
Yes.
really opened up in the last like 15 years, which is like part of this crazy transformation that's going on right now. And I think because they have like the older generations who have lived through those scary, chaotic, terrible times, I think that's part of why their good times are like going into nature, going to the finca, enjoying the present moment with people they care about, whether it's their friends or their families. So I think that's part of that in the moment, like less about the hustle, more in the moment, more about the enjoyment of that connection, that enjoyment of what they do have, instead of chasing for some long-term future goal that, was kind of unpredictable for a very long time. So I think that's a big part of that cheerfulness and that presence that I think a lot of foreigners end up liking Colombia for.
I
yeah. I think
think
what
I think a lot of that isolation still exists, though, Sam. Not saying that you weren't saying that, but for example, if you meet some people here in Medellin or on the coast who have never traveled before, a wide majority of people have never traveled to Bogota, or
Yes.
paisas have never gone to the coast, and they think because they have never gone that Bogota is the scariest place on earth, or the poorest place on earth, or the least
Yes.
safe place on earth, and they hate the Rolos, even though they've never been and they've never met a Rolo. And you
All
get that kind
Colombia.
of like, yeah, you
Yes.
get that kind of isolated perspective sometimes. But for the people who do travel and do see other parts of Colombia and of the world, they really appreciate it, and you can see the different pockets that you were talking about perfectly. I think that's a really good way to put it.
James, you
For
don't have to
sure,
tell
it's
me, man.
still
I'm
there.
I'm Asian, so like I'm either from China, Japan, or Korea.
Hmm.
There's
Wow,
no other
Korea
option.
too.
There's
I've ne-
oh Korea. If they're
They love the K-pop
if
here.
they're cultured, they'll give me Korea.
Yes.
But usually it's are you Chinese, are you Japanese, and if I say not, I'm not either. They go right. You gotta be Korean then. And then if I say I'm Chinese, no. Sometimes sometimes if I'm patient, I'll give them the backstory. I'm like, I'm Australian. My family's Chinese. And then they'll go, all right, cool. And they'll nod their head and they'll go, all right, so you're Chinese, right? And like, which part of Japan are you from?
Yes.
He's a
Eddie, I'm,
Chino.
I'm
Yeah,
interested.
Chino.
Yeah,
Un
I,
chinito,
I
sí,
just
exacto.
I just say
Chinos.
Chino. I just say I'm Chino like 99% of the time. It's like I can't be bothered.
I mean,
Eddie,
Eddie,
I'm
you might
interested to
remember
hear your.
2010, the national flights, they were like 500,000 pesos. And that was when the peso was like,
Yes.
$1 for 2000. So it was like
2000.
$250 to go Bogota to Medellin.
A
That
dollar
cuts
was
out like
1,800 pesos then.
95% of people who travel.
U.S. dollar was
Yeah.
1,800 pesos back then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yep.
And it was scary or, at least dangerous, or at least there was a lot of fear about traveling by land as well. And it was just super
Yeah.
uncomfortable because you're
Because
going
2010
through
was
mountains.
2010 was just right after Uribe was president, right? And the
Yeah,
country was
five years
just
later,
starting to
6
get
years later.
safer. Like there
Yeah,
was that.
2000s is when Colombia started being unleashed and
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
realizing its potential for
yeah.
sure.
So we got here. I think we got here, Sam, like right when it was like
Yeah,
just starting to get safe, and it was pretty
yeah.
cool. I always tell
It
people
was safe.
Bogota from 2010 to 2013 was like a completely different experience from what it is now. Completely different.
I felt in the psyche, people are asking, like, why are you here? Why are you in Colombia? Like, no
Yes.
one knew. Like, every single Colombian was like, what are you doing here? But I'd already done the loop of Colombia at that time, and I'd seen, like, this place is amazing. Like, I've just ridden through Central America, and I'm like, whoa, all of it is here in Colombia. But it wasn't in the psyche yet. And that was weird because I was seeing it without that fear, without those headlines of if you get a bus, you're going to
Great.
get kidnapped. You're going to, have all this, and from your pressure from your parents to not travel, to be safe, to don't go out, blah, blah, blah. I'm just seeing with fresh eyes. I'm getting around. I'm like, wow. Right. And that's real. That's the exciting part of this transformation, is that like so many Colombians have realized the beauty and the potential of their own country.
I think you're right. At that time, it was safe, but they didn't know it yet. They didn't realize
Exactly.
yet what they were sitting on. I think it was 2014 that they started the peace process with Santos. But really, that had started. I mean, culturally, it had begun. And right at that time period, like I got here at the end of 2009, so really the same time as you guys arrived to Bogota. And like I had that same similar experience. Like, why are you guys so afraid? Hold on, don't you live here? Like, I don't see anything scary about this. I just to tell a story. One time I went out really that the end of that year 2009 went out and got kind of stood up by a group where I got there late, and so I was out in Las Aguas in Bogota by myself, and some guys come up to me and they're talking to me, and they decided they're going to rob me, and I had 17,000 pesos or whatever. I said, yeah, yeah, take them, and they said, where are your dollars? And I said, I'm teaching English, I don't have any dollars, take the money, I'm going to go home now. And they gave me the money back. They said, this isn't the gringo we want. Here, take it back. And they walked me to the bus stop. Get on your bus, gringo. We don't want anyone else to rob you. And like it was just like they were like they didn't know what they were working with yet. I don't think that would still happen. Like you gotta be smart when you go out.
The crime has
Uh,
got a little bit more organized since then.
Right, for sure. But that was how young it was. Like nobody, there were not a lot of people. Like maybe in the
It's
oil
true.
industry, there were foreigners. But again, they were sequestered. The rich Colombians kept them away in certain areas, and there weren't people riding around their motorcycle, going wherever they wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. The Scopamina market is a completely new market. Well, at least for foreigners anyway.
Let's talk about danger a bit then. Maybe we could
So,
start with Eddie.
Yeah. What do you want to know? Like my stories?
I guess, if you had a buddy back in the States who said, Eddie, is Colombia dangerous? I'm thinking about coming down. How are you going to answer that?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of nuance here. I think it really depends on your lifestyle. So I hear a lot. So obviously the the trending topic about Colombia right now is all the scoping that's going on, right? And
Mhm.
I definitely won't go as far as to say guys deserve to get. I don't think anyone deserves to get scoped, but every time I hear someone that's getting scoped, it's always the same fucking story. They're going for easy tail on Tinder. They're fucking going out drinking by themselves, and they're basically just not applying any street smarts. So I think you have to be vigilant. If you have street smarts and you are being vigilant, I don't think it's that dangerous. Um, and when I say danger, to me, danger is like, is my life in danger, right? Like I've been mugged 3 times in Colombia in the 12 years I've been here, and at no point, and one of them was at gunpoint. I never felt my life was in danger. Like, and the funny thing is, the first time I got robbed, I spoke zero Spanish, and so it was actually not. I didn't feel it was that dangerous because he has arm behind his back, and he obviously said something like "Give me your money" or some shit. I didn't know. I didn't understand him, so I actually fought him. I pushed him off, and they ran away. Whereas if he had said, like, the second time I got robbed, I spoke Spanish, and the guy was like, I've got a knife. I'm gonna fucking stab you if you don't give me your phone. And there was two of them, so I just figured, well, I'll just give him my phone because it's just a phone, whatever. But at no point have I ever felt that my life was in danger in Colombia. But I'm not one to go out by myself. If I go out partying, I'm gonna go out with Colombian friends. I'm gonna go out with a group of friends. Like I'm gonna have my logistics mapped out. I've never been like intoxicated to the point where I'm not in control of the situation. Like I'm very vigilant about that. Um, I've never used Tinder ever. Um, like all the girlfriends I've had, I've met just socially in Colombia. Uh, so I think it is dangerous. It can be dangerous if you're just being like, if you assume that you can just go out partying like you're in America or in Australia or whatever. But if you have some street smarts, you're in Colombia, you've got to be vigilant. I don't think it's. I think it's manageable. That's my thoughts. What do you guys think?
Nate.
There, I think you said something important. You said like if you party like you did in America, like if you go out like you did in America, and unfortunately, that's the thing is that there's no going out 101 in Colombia. Going out in Colombia 101. It's like if that's what you know and that's all you've done like all your life, and this is your first time outside of the U.S., then you really do have to watch these things. Like just people get taken because they miss the basics of like what a girl looks like. They don't watch their drink. They just meet up with strangers. And especially one thing I've heard a lot lately is people going over to girls' houses right away. And it's not actually like a girl's house. It's a place where they're basically going to get kidnapped and held
Yes.
for ransom or whatever. So like I'm
Your
actually
audio
in
got
Peru at the
a little-
moment.
Your audio got a little
man.
weird there, Nate. Sorry.
It's better
to
now.
cut you off. But yeah, it kind of went in and out. Let me put it over to Sean. And actually, Nate, maybe if you just take your headphones out and do like the normal audio or
Yeah.
something.
All right. I'm gonna try and switch to those wired ones. And if not, I'll just use my computer.
Cool. Sean, what are your thoughts as a younger guy? Because you're what? You're 22, 21?
24 now.
24 now.
Yeah.
Damn. There you go.
In
Time
a couple
flies.
years. No, but for me, like I had a bunch of university friends who would go out, get pissed drunk, and then start fights with anyone they see on the street. And if you try to do that in Colombia, it all comes down to just being smart. Like if you go out and you don't speak any Spanish, and then you're getting completely fucked up, and then you're going up to everyone just being a complete fool, that's when you're gonna have problems. But if you just live like a low key lifestyle, if you're just smart when you go out and you're not a dumbass, like you're gonna have a great time here. That's what I tell everybody. Because I have a lot of friends that ask me, like, "Oh, how Colombia?" Like I watch Narcos and it looks like super dangerous and all this, but it's like completely different from how the lifestyle is in that show now. But it's just not understood in the U.S. Like people still just watch that show and they assume that's how it is. But I tell all my friends, like, if you guys want to come, like, you're gonna have a great time. There's so many cool places you could go to, and I've never been endangered, like, knock on wood, but I've never been robbed here. I've never been like had a knife pulled on me, and never really had any bad encounters. just because you just can't be stupid. You just got to be like a cool guy and just go out and have a good time and just don't start trouble, and then you're gonna be cool.
Yeah, I would echo that, and I think what Eddie said at the onset about lifestyle, like if you're looking for, if you come to Medellin or Colombia in general and are looking for sex and drugs, you have a target on your back.
Hey guys, quick break from the podcast to tell you about job stacking. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltza, author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income by implementing his paycheck multiplication layering method. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond $20K a month. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, if you're interested in unleashing your earning potential and doubling your income, then click the link in the description and book a call with Rolf right now. Honestly, I think the whole Dar papaya is a little bit played out. Like anyone that reads about danger in Colombia is going to read that. So it's kind of like surface level. So we'll move on. But I did have one kind of interesting question for Alex in the Campo. Sometimes people say like, I would never buy farmland in Latin America because then like some thugs are going to come and just tell me to get off the land and I have no recourse, that kind of thing. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Any kind of like extortion or squatters or anything like that in the Campo?
Okay, so it does exist, absolutely. I mean, I would say more like squatters. They call it invasión, invadir. But really, and this is a bigger issue if you have too much land. And I know the papaya thing, but like it goes back to a culture, and this comes back to strata too. Like if you're poor, nobody will rob you. If you have 17,000 pesos, nobody is going to rob you. But if you're hanging 100 acres and you're not using most of it, or if you're hanging a $3,000 camera around your neck, somebody's going to want to share in the harvest because, they don't have winter here, right? So we in the north, we get accustomed to like, we get whatever we do and then we save it and we can it and we preserve it and we keep it. And because the ant and the grasshopper were going to die because winter's coming. But in the tropics, there's a harvest. And when you have a harvest, you share it. And then whenever somebody else has a harvest, they'll share it with you. So I really think it comes back to that culture. So like we have had in my small town, there have been some invasions, but the people invade abandoned or not used, underused land. I keep my land used, and that's how I protect myself. I have had, some. I do some strategies. For example, like I do plant some fruit trees. For example, like on the edges of the property, and I have not had any problem with people like coming into the property to like eat guavas, because I just make sure there's some like near the edge too, and that seems to be plenty. And so I guess you have to kind of adjust your mind to that. Like if you're gonna go out with what you need for that night. I know we're all attached to our phones. In Colombia there used to be this thing called la flecha. The flecha was these like Nokia brick phones, and like that's all you needed. And if somebody stole it, it was like $10. Oh no, I lost my flecha, I gotta get a new one. And so, think about what is in your pockets. What are you going out with? One other thing I'll mention about the campo, if because some people like getting blacked out drunk. That's not my thing. But that in Colombia, and I would say even if you're in Europe or the United States, the way to party is not to forget what you're doing. It's to chill and have a vibe. But if you really want to like really party hard, that's what the fincas are for. You get it, rent a finca, and go and be safe in that space. So yeah, Sean, I see you waving your hand.
No, that's a huge point because that's another thing is I feel like the going out culture is completely different here as it is in the U.S. for me. Is that you don't need you don't really need to go out to drink when you're in Colombia because there's such a different dance culture here. You go out to the clubs and everyone's dancing salsa, bachata, reggaeton, all that stuff, and like you feed off that energy itself without even needing the alcohol. In the U.S., everyone's just standing in the corner with their cup, bobbing their head around, or like jumping around. So you kind of need to have a little drink in you to have fun doing that. But when you're learning all the dances here, like you could go out and have a great time, and you'll remember everything. You don't even need a drink.
That's a big one. That's something I'm seeing here in Mexico actually, because Colombians dance a lot more than Mexicans in general, but the American tourist culture is coming into the Cancun, into the Playa del Carmen, and you'll see when you go out in the restaurants along the Quinta, the main party avenue, everyone's really sitting down. It's a much more of a sit down type culture, and a big thing I miss from Colombia is how much people dance, man. And you don't need a drink. Definitely helps and adds to the fire, but everyone is just up and dancing, liberated. It's in their blood. It's an amazing kind of energy to be a part of. Which it takes letting go for someone new there. I remember being at Gringo Tuesdays in 2010, and I'm looking around, I'm like, I gotta learn to dance. Like if I'm gonna hang out, I have to dance. And it's like you got to let go of like all of these restrictions and programs that you have growing up in Western cultures, right? That they don't have. They've been moving and shaking in a really healthy way, I think, for a long time.
I will say
Even
the
if
one
you are
exception to that,
a
the one
okay,
exception to that to the dancing thing is I do love going to like a really ghetto barrio tienda and just sinking fucking 20 pokers around a little plastic table, little fucking shitty jukebox with some porn playing on it, and just like getting drunk with some old guys and sitting there till like midnight just drinking fucking pokers the entire night and maybe a bottle of guado. I do like that. But I obviously love the dancing culture of Colombia. But like if I'm gonna I rarely drink, but like if I'm gonna drink, I want to go out to the local tienda and like get pissed with a couple of old men.
Okay, and have you noticed that locally people they don't do that at 3 in the morning? That's like a afternoon activity. Maybe you could even make it
Yeah,
home by 10 or 11, right?
yeah, which is great for me because I don't like staying out too late. It usually starts unplanned around, as you say, 2, 3 in the afternoon because it's always like the old guys like after they because they've been working since 5 o'clock in the morning, right? And so they have a couple of beers to unwind, and then before you know it, you go. But I could speak hours about tienda culture. That's one of my favorite parts of Colombia. And like, if you don't, I feel bad for like the gringos who come to Colombia and they've never experienced tienda culture. I
let's
think you
let's
really
do
need
it.
it.
Let's do it. Eddie, give us a breakdown of tienda culture.
So a tienda in Colombia, it's a imagine like your local convenience store, but it's also like a bar. I don't know how to explain it.
yes,
Sam probably has a better explanation than I do. It's like you go there, they have eggs, they have milk. It's like all the essentials, but there's also
you
like
have music.
it's usually two plastic yellow poker tables. There's usually a jukebox with a video playing with like just topless women on
Yes,
from like videos or reggaeton videos from the 90s. It's usually reggaeton, salsa, bachata, the classics,
vallenato. Yes,
vallenato.
And
yes,
yeah.
Um,
yes.
but yeah,
I know.
for me, a good tienda has two plastic tables, an old fat woman running the joint, and she's like the boss, um,
Yeah, me da risa.
and like
Chistoso.
really fucking loud, obnoxiously loud music.
Yes,
Is it
Manuela, otra
intimidating?
ronda.
exacto.
Yeah.
Exacto.
Is it
Diomedes.
Those
intimidating? Like,
focus,
are you
por
rocking up
favor.
solo? Like, who you rocking up there with that? And are you kind of sitting at the same table as some people you don't know and
So
making
I
friends?
usually rock up with like one or two friends of mine, and it's usually like I have a couple of friends who, uh, I'm probably not gonna take like, we were talking before about like having street smarts. Like if you don't have that sort of like, s- you know, s- travel experience, if you're like, maybe you've never left America or you've never left Australia, I probably wouldn't bring you to a tienda. But if it's like usually I go with a friend of mine who's like me, who's lived here for a while. They speak a little bit of Spanish at least. And the night usually begins. We're just there to get a couple of beers, and eventually we start talking to like the drunken guys at the table next to us, and then
Or
that's
they
how
talk to
you.
you.
And yeah, they talk to you, and then they offer you a shot of guaro, and then that's how it begins, and that's the entire night.
So, how important is it to speak Spanish? I've gotten in some discussions on Twitter about this. Obviously, to me, it's completely enriched my experience. But some people say, it's not that important. Maybe it depends what age category you're in. And I don't know if I don't always know if these people insisting, and if they still live in the United States, they even understand, because a lot of the pushback I get is, well, these dang Mexicans in our country aren't learning the language. And it's like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about, man.
Let's put
Um,
that to Eddie because he's a professional English writer.
Man, I think it's essential, man. If you really want to, if you really love Colombian culture, you really want to immerse yourself. Like it's obvious, you have to speak Spanish. But from like a survival level, like if you're in Bogota, Medellin, like just logistically, you can get around without Spanish. If we're talking pure logistics, you can get around without Spanish in Medellin, in Bogota, and obviously in Cartagena. You're probably gonna get ripped off in Cartagena. But yeah,
Yes.
if you're here for like an extended amount of time, absolutely you have to fucking speak Spanish. Like, what's wrong with you?
Mhm.
This is
Nate,
something that I've kind of been dealing with personally because I've been spending more time in Brazil. Like I kind of like Brazil as well now, and I'm starting over with Portuguese, and the more that I've been learning Portuguese, it's the same thing. Like I've just been liking Brazil more and more as my Portuguese progresses. Because yeah, I can get by day to day, like with essential things in life. Like I'm not going to go hungry or anything like that. But it's just such better interactions, and you learn more stuff. You hear things from locals. It's just so different, and I kind of forgot that after learning Spanish and being pretty comfortable in Colombia at like a pretty high level of Spanish. So it's not essential, but if you come and you're not even interested at all in trying to learn, then it's really going to slow you down, and I don't think you're going to get the full experience.
hmm.
And
Can we
I'd
ask
add
Sean
something
his
to
opinion
that.
as the
Okay,
younger guy? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would love to hear Sean's view.
go ahead.
Yeah, when I first moved here, I didn't know any Spanish, and I was living in Bogota, and you could definitely get by. That's 100%. Like you don't need
Yes.
it, but if you're gonna live here and like you actually want to meet local people here and actually build a real relationship with them, you got to learn Spanish. It's just not possible. They're not going to take you seriously if you just don't know their language and you don't even attempt to try to learn it. My experience here has gotten so much better in the second year just from knowing more Spanish than I did the first time. And I've met way more locals that I can actually go out with. They show me like little parts of Colombia I never even been to or even heard of before, just like surface level cities that I was going to, like just the big cities. But you start meeting the locals, speaking Spanish with them, they'll show you all like the hidden gems around the country. So I think the two essential things is you need to learn how to dance and you need to learn how to speak Spanish here. That's like the two things.
Yes.
Solid. Because if you don't, it starts affecting the country a little bit. It's if you're there, if you're in a foreign country, I mean, respect is pretty cool to kind of interact with people in that way. But if you're coming in, and whether it's English or your native language, and you're kind of like imposing your language on their culture and their language, um, it's kind of like um, I don't want to say invasion, but it's certainly pushing the borders of your culture into theirs. And if you're not willing to adapt and respect theirs, it it starts reducing the all the enjoyable things that we all mentioned that we love about Colombia. And we're seeing this happen in Mexico, in Costa Rica, when people come in and they want to speak their language and do it their way. We start losing these beautiful things that make these countries so much fun. So there's also that, if you don't want to be that guy.
Hmm. I'd like to make a soft transition into building relationships with local families, typically because we're all guys here through the girlfriends. Something that James talks about on Twitter, Sean talks about on Twitter. I think most of everyone here has talked about it, to some extent through their social media. Would love to hear maybe about some of the culture shocks that you guys had. Meeting these local families, the way that the family unit is structured, and the traditions that they have. Maybe James, you if you want to start.
Yeah. I I would say so. I started dating my girlfriend, who I'm still dating now, pretty much right when I arrived here in Colombia. So we've been together for 2.5 years now, and I would say one of the main things that really surprised me right off the bat was how fast she wanted to introduce me to her family. And I think that's something that everyone experiences. Like it's the second or third date, and I'm not kidding, because part of the approval process is: does my mom like you? Does my dad like you? Do you get along with my sister? Do you get along with my sister's daughter? Like that stuff I would never even think about in the US until the fifth, sixth, maybe like months into dating. And it's like a big occasion when you finally get invited. But here it's just like, yeah, we're going to my mom's. This is our second date, and you gotta bring some gifts, which I was like a another culture shock in and of itself. But yeah, that's you got to get approval of the family because the families are so close, so closely knit. Approval of the family is really, really important when you're talking about relationships.
And it is definitely you're dating her family. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, you got to get to know them, and that's part of the process. Which, yeah, it's way different than in the United States, at least in my experience. Um, but also think that it provides a lot of information if you are actually, somewhat serious about it. It is a great fact finding mission. So I think, just try to see it for what it is, and take advantage of that. Like, okay, so that's what she's probably going to look like when she's in 20 years or whatever, that sort of thing. This is how they deal with each other. This is how they talk with each other. They're very open, but they're very family oriented. And so I would just say, like, generally, there was a joke on Twitter, like, we've been dating for a month, so my mom's gonna send you the electric bill, the recibo de la luz, so you can help us out a little bit, But I mean, it's
Yeah,
there's some truth to
that
that. There's
was
some truth to that.
Yes,
that
I
tweet
put
was
that.
so fucking funny. I showed that to my girlfriend. She laughed her ass off.
Whose tweet is it?
I put that
Bowtie
in
Colombia,
Twitter.
yeah.
Yeah, probably bow tie. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I
funny.
guess we're all just learning as gringos. I mean, maybe Bowtied Colombia, you could give us your perspective and some tips for us.
Yeah, I want to say that the family here is very open to gringos because they want to teach them their culture, right? They want to teach everything. They want that gringo dance with them, that try some arepa, some food. So it's a really interesting because family treat probably most of you like a son in their families, right? Like I don't know, somebody that is easygoing to treat, and they want to speak you in bad English, broken English. Also, they receive you. It's like I think that gringo never, nunca experimenta eso en otras partes. Siento yo aquí la familia como que si es la familia, por ejemplo, de la novia de James, I think that the people is always I don't know, cariñosa, mucho cariño con los extranjeros, siento yo. Y se ve mucho. And I want to say that for for the learning Spanish, I want to ask you, how do you learn Spanish? And also, I want to say that some cities are very difficult to understand. For example, people from Cartagena, it's very hard. I don't recommend learn Spanish in Cartagena because it's really difficult. I think Bogota is the best. The accent is the best to learn Spanish. But I want to ask you, how do you learn Spanish? How do you know Spanish? If you pay some, I don't know.
On the streets of Bogota. Picked up
Yeah.
a Spanish grammar book, a some counterfeit like version of Harry Potter and read word by word.
Oh,
Living with a
that's
couple
great.
mates in Candelaria, we were renting a two-bedroom apartment for like 500,000 pesos. But learning with the Spanish grammar book in a group environment where you're competing a little bit, that's how I started. And just being on the streets, buying empanadas and the beers at the Tienda. Great way to learn.
I always say it comes down to like two things. It's full immersion, so like coming to Latin America or coming to Colombia and being forced into an environment that doesn't speak your native language, and then two, daily conversation. And I think if you don't have both of those things, it it can take way longer than it needs to to learn the language and become fluent. But with daily conversation and full immersion, I became fluent in Spanish in like 18 months, maybe a little bit longer than that. It was pretty
You
quick.
speak Paisa Spanish. You talk like people from here. Very
Yeah,
Paisa.
which is pretty
Yes.
crazy. Some people ask me from Medellin if I'm from Medellin, and I'm like, look at this face. Look at this face. Does this look paisa? No, it's not paisa.
So I think like
But
the
when you
speaking
speak,
part of Spanish
it's
is
like a
pretty
Paisa.
easy. I think the
Exactly.
speaking part of Spanish is easy because like the grammar is very very logical. So that's the easy part. Like for me, the hard part is the listening. So just to like double down what James was saying, like you have to have daily conversation. To me, I've never struggled to pronounce words in Spanish and speak Spanish. To me, it was always the listening. So I was fortunate that TV show El Patron del Mal came out when I moved to Colombia,
Great.
and I literally just binge watched that for like 3 months, and I went from like speaking zero Spanish, being conversationally fluent in like 6 months. Literally just binge watching El Patron del Mal. So I would say like listening is the most important thing. I was also listening to like the radio, um, freaking watching all sorts of telenovelas. There was one I remember called Mujeres al Límite. That's a really funny one for those who are listening to that. Mujeres al Límite. It's basically like just women losing their shit every episode, which is great. But
Yes,
yeah,
I
as
know
long
it.
as you're like, exposing yourself to like people having everyday conversation, like you're good to go. You'll learn pretty quickly. But like the grammar stuff, like that stuff's easy. You can learn that, with just with the internet these days. I'm sure there's like all sorts of courses and things.
Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about BitRefill. BitRefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. BitRefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information.
So
Could I stick on the family theme a little bit? Because I wanted to get some of these stories out. I know Sean recently shared some stories where his American family came down to Colombia to meet
Great.
the Colombian family, and that could have been a movie. I'm sure a lot of cultural fun stuff. Do you want to run
100%.
us through this experience?
Yeah, so my family, my parents and my sister came down to Colombia for the first time for New Year's. And so dedicated a day or a weekend to go up to Boyacá to meet my girlfriend's family. And so my dad, I think this goes into like the Spanish part of how to learn because my dad was taking classes online, but he was learning Spanish, Spanish from Spain. So when he got here and people started speaking to him, he was like, I don't know anything they're saying. Like all the words were kind of switched, the accents are different and everything. Um, but when we went up to go meet them, it was super cool because they got the full authentic experience. Like we went to the terminal, the bus terminal. We took the 3.5 hour bus ride up to Bojaca to Sogamoso. Um, and I think this kind of goes into just how like giving Colombian families are that they planned this whole day trip for us. They rented a car, like we were all packed in this little minivan, and we drove 2 hours to Lago de Tota. I don't know if you guys have been over there, Um,
Yes.
Beautiful spot. And we went to a restaurant. They all tried rabbit for the first time, and then also some fresh trucha from the lake. But my family brought some gifts for them, and while they were trying to speak and everything, like no one really understood each other, but they were just trying to understand, and we'd have some translators, like we would translate what they're saying and everything. But my family like fell in love with them. They couldn't really understand much of what they were saying, but they could just feel like the energy and the love that they were giving towards them, and just how they were speaking to them. Even if they didn't understand the words, they understood all the emotions coming out of it. And they understood now like my life here, which was, I think, it was the coolest part, is that they got to
Yes.
see like what my weekends look like driving that bus up to Sogamoso and coming back here. The one issue though is, I don't know if there was like a bug going around or something, but we all our both of our families got food poisoning or some virus, and everyone was throwing up the next day. So I don't know
Ah,
if it
okay.
was something that we ate. I don't know if it was a virus like that we brought from the U.S. here or something, but it wasn't a good next couple of weeks. But but the trip itself was great. Um, but yeah, I've been dating my girlfriend for about 2 years now, and when like James was saying, like you meet the family so fast. I think it was within the second day that I met her family, and I just remember walking into the house, and her dad came down and gave me a big hug, like he welcomed me nice.
Yes.
But her brother was sitting and eating lunch at the table across in the dining room, and I just remember the death stare that he was giving me from across, and I was like trying not to make eye contact with him, like I said hey and everything, but like he just finished his food, death stared me, and walked upstairs. And we're cool now, like getting to know each other and everything, but I think it's just like that brother sister, like you need to protect your sister kind of thing. Um, but I think you meet the family so quick too, just because everyone in Latin America, they live with their family until you get married. So
Hmm. Yes.
pretty much like in America, you move out at 18 and you go to college, and you get your own place
Yes.
afterwards. Like you get a job in another city. So maybe like the brothers living in New York and the sisters out in Colorado or whatever. But in Latin America and Colombia, everyone's still living in the house. So she's with her brother, her sisters, her dad. Everyone's still there. And they're around 28, 30 years old and still living at home, which is completely normal. So I think that's like a really cool part. Is just like the family dynamic there is just so strong.
One thing that was really weird for me when I mean, my girlfriend now is Venezuelan, but like when I was dating Colombian women, like realizing how traditional the male female roles are in their family.
Hmm.
Every Colombian girlfriend I've ever had, the dad's always like said something along the lines of, is she taking care of you? Is she keeping the house clean? You know, not being vulgar about it, but like even like just questions like, you guys practicing having some babies? Like, is she taking care of you in that department? I mean, they're not vulgar about it, but like, it's kind of like the wink, wink, like, are you sleeping with my daughter kind of thing. I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but that's been my experience with every single Colombian girlfriend's
Hmm.
dad. So, what do you guys think about? Like, do you guys consider that to be fall under the category of machismo? And how do you even define machismo? I'd like to hear BowtiedColombia's version, and as well as everyone else's definition of what they define machismo to them.
Machismo here is, I don't know, it's very hard to define because women always expect, for example, the masculine role in society, pay, provide, and they take care for the children and kitchen is like a normal thing. Though I know feminists and all of that crap is mainly in Bogota. Bogota is a little bit left, I think, but in the rest of the country is normal roles. It's not like machismo. I don't see in that way. I think that girls don't see in that way.
That's what I thought.
Here,
I used to think
yes.
machismo was like the man, like being like actually like beating his woman.
Exactly.
Um,
Machismo is fight violence, I think.
right,
Yes.
right, okay, okay. So like traditional role that wouldn't be considered machismo. All right, that's what I want to get clear
No,
on.
I don't think. Yes, exactly.
Eddie,
I,
I
I don't
think
some of
think
the
there
so.
is a
things.
confusion. There is a confusion about this, and part of that is cultural. So, and maybe it has to do with the feminist thing. So, one thing
Mhm.
I've totally, everyone can recognize it here, is that women are completely comfortable with fulfilling their role, and they expect you to fulfill
Yes.
your role, and they know what those roles are, and they don't understand if you say, well, I don't know what my role is. Your role is very obvious. You should be making money and paying and making sure we have a place to live, and we can go places and do things, and my job is, well, she knows what her job is, and you probably do
Yeah,
too if you think about it. So,
yeah,
but where is the problem? There is obviously this bad version of machismo, which could be what, sexism or whatever. Violence definitely crosses that line. I think probably it could be even a little bit on this side of that line if there's some sort of disrespect, if you menospreciar, if you don't value those roles equally, if you think, or some people might think, the woman's role is not as valuable or important, when I think the idea is that we agree that those are two roles, but both are important. So I think there is somewhere where it crosses to too much, but nowadays, with whatever is going on in our worldwide culture, just the fact of recognizing that the roles are different is considered machismo. And I
yeah,
don't think, and no, I think almost no Latin woman would think that that's bad. So it's like there's
yeah.
two machismos. There's up until a certain point that's normal, and then obviously we can probably all agree that there's a line that you could cross too much. Don't be
I think
violent. You know,
I think what
that's pretty
Bowtie just
obvious.
said was important because I like I said I live mostly in Bogota, and that's where that definition of like, oh, the man,
Yeah.
the man's being sexist, like that's where that narrative comes from. Like if you are, I think outside of that, like I'm in Cali now, like they definitely don't think that here. um I think Sam was going to say something. I'd like to
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what
it
Sam
was on
said.
that theme. I mean, yeah, Bogota, you do get people who have left their families in El Campo to come to study, and that's where they have some different perspectives and ideas. But having a friend who got married, with a Bogota girl, he told me about when they get married, the priest really sits you down and says, you're expected to have children now. This is a marriage, and they really, what you were saying about your girlfriend's dad, like that was pretty much what he said the priest was saying. And then that connected with what I remember getting around to these, just the middle of nowhere in Colombia, and just coming through a mountain range and seeing a town in the distance. In the middle of every single town is a Catholic church. The influence of the Catholic churches on Colombia, I think, is like a big part of this, because they really become the center of civilization in so many ways.
Yeah.
And you see those ideas, those family values, today, especially in the older generations, but you see them kind of coming through in conversations like this. So I think the Catholic Church has a lot to do with this.
Depending on how old you are, and like if you're coming from the US, Canada, or Europe, I definitely think you have to go through a little bit of deprogramming when you come to Colombia, because those things have gotten switched up a little bit. And yeah, you might have the wrong definition of machismo when you get to Colombia.
The most I don't this is not machismo, but like I dated a Bogota girl that was like she similar to what James was saying. Second date, we're gonna go to the family finca for some this weekend. This is the first time it's ever happened to me, but like we sat down for dinner, and like all of the women just got up off the table. My girlfriend's like, "Yeah, it's your turn. You're the man. You sit and eat first, and then we're gonna stand around and just watch you guys eat." It was really, I thought it was actually like, I mean, I'm all for traditional roles, but this was just uncomfortable. Like, imagine like
It's
a
too
big
much.
dining table, like there's like 10 men, and we're all eating, sancocho, whatever it was that we're cooking, and the women are just standing around over them, watching us eat, and making sure that we enjoy dinner, and like asking us like, "Do you need a drink? Like, how's the sancocho?" Um, And I was like, "You gonna sit down and eat?" She's like, "No, no, no. In this family, the men eat first, and we'll eat afterwards." So I thought that was like, and I'm like not liberal in any way. I thought that was just uncomfortable.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting. I have seen that the matriarch sometimes we have to tell her to sit down. Like, yes, yes, everybody
Every
has
time.
everything. Now, please eat now, mother-in-law. Please
Yes,
come to the
exactly.
table now. Come on. Come on, come eat dinner, you too.
What about you, Bowtie Columbia? Does your mom, grandma sit down, or are they like hovering and like going back and forth?
Well, I think all families here from, well, my mother is from Bucaramanga, my father is from Boyacá, so, and I from Santa Marta, so I know a lot of culture of Colombia. I know, for example, that women in my family enjoy that men eat well, for example.
mm,
If you don't
Hmm.
eat a lot of food, they think that you are sick or ill or something, or yes, they want you to eat. I don't know. It's like a role. It's like a really important to my mom and my grandmother and all of family. Uh, Provide in a way that women provide. For example, take care and give us food. It's like a normal thing. I don't know in Bogota or the future, the generation of the future, but right now it's like a normal thing. And my father always work, and my mom lives in the house. So and they still are together from 30 years. So I grow
I, w-
up in this family. Yes.
I will say that a lot of people will listen to this and think, "Oh my God, Colombia sounds like heaven. I'm going to Colombia." Based on like everything that we just talked about. And my girlfriend is very much like that. Her family is very much like that. It's a generational thing, though, and I think it's changing. And a
Okay.
lot of the things, a lot of the themes, a lot of the trends that we're seeing in Europe, in Canada, the United States, a lot of those trends and themes are coming to Latin America, albeit slowly and probably not with as much impact because of the deep-seated traditionalism. But I think a lot of those changes are coming to Latin America
Yes.
for sure, and you can see it. You can see it with the younger generations.
It's
Yes.
partly
Totally.
as a survival, like it's like the family unit has always been about survival, right? We came together to to divide activities and work together. I think we're just needing each other less to survive. I mean, obviously, deeper human connection relationship, there's still a need, but it's still I think that's really the big driver of this, is that we can really fend for ourselves with our phones and our internet and our technology now. So we have less of a need for these as kind of rigid structures.
Yeah, and that whole topic goes maybe beyond Colombia. I mean, that's worldwide right now. One thing I wanted to mention, and this could apply, in El Campo, we kind of see what's happening, and we can kind of choose to ignore it sometimes. A lot of times, one person told me, "Wow, Colombia, that's such a socialist country," and I said, "Well." I guess kind of. And so he was there one time. He visited and he or he read something, and he felt that there was a lot of laws imposed. And it's true that there are laws in Colombia. It may be different or more restrictive in some ways, but at the same time, like here, we're on the Central Cordillera. It feels a lot like they make laws on that other cordillera, on that other mountain range, and they don't come over here to tell us and make sure we're following them. We're just like, oh yeah, they made that law over there, and that one we don't like. We're not going to do that. And so in the campo, it is almost seems like very federal. It seems like it's very maybe even anarchist in a certain way, where like we kind of pick and choose what are the things we want to pay attention to. um, and one thing I noticed that kind of broke that trend was in the pandemic. it almost felt like there was fear coming through the radio and the television waves. So that was an interesting experience. But at the same time, everybody at that point wanted to go to the campo. It was really terrible in the cities to be locked down. When you have, 5 or 6 acres, it doesn't really feel like you're locked down at all.
Yeah.
So I
That
think
was
right now in Colombia, there's a trend where people in the city are thinking that they want to go back to the campo, and I think this is what we talked about they're starting to realize it's not as dangerous as it used to be, and so Colombia became very urbanized, one of the most urbanized countries in the world. I think it was 88%, and that's starting to head in the other direction. People in the cities are going out to the pueblos around the towns, and people are starting to come back to the campo and kind of rediscover their roots, I think.
in a big way. I think the pandemic triggered so much domestic tourism, which wasn't happening before. Like it was kind of there, but really foreigners were really blazing the gringo trail around Colombia. Pandemic happened and never like you can't leave Colombia. Colombians just started traveling around Colombia in mass, and it was really amazing. And then you're seeing that same thing happening in real estate. I mean, the finca near to the city has always been popular, but now that trend has increased. I mean, you look around Medellin, all over Antioquia, your Rio Negros are popping up, your Llano Grandes, they're becoming cities in themselves. We've got the internet everywhere now. So we're not organizing our civilizations by the city anymore. I think we're more organizing by time zones with the teams we need to work together with.
Hmm. Let's talk a little bit about what it might look like to raise a family in Colombia.
Does anyone have kids? Is anyone here
Who's got
qualified to
kids?
speak on that?
Everybody got real quiet.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
I'm working
The
on it
only
too, man.
thing, yeah, the only thing I think that would, because the food is cheap and high quality. The land, I think if you got a family, you got to get yourself set up so your security situation is normal, just like in anywhere else. We talked about security. The only thing is, I would say healthcare. It's a little bit different here. Like healthcare is free and slow, or you could pay. So you just want to figure out exactly where you're at. I would say most things people I just do it privately, like especially like tests and stuff. They'll say, yeah, do this, file this paperwork, get this test, and you go across the street. It's like, can I get this test? Yeah, come on in. It's $5, and you just get the test. I got it. I did it. I did the test. I'm done. And people here generally will wait 2 months in lines and calling and scheduling to get that test for free to avoid paying $5 or $10. So I don't know. What do you guys have? What's your experience with like healthcare? I think that's probably the biggest difference.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. Introducing Rolf Haltza's Paycheck Multiplication Layering Method, a revolutionary approach that redefines the traditional career path. This is Rolf's new Done With You program, where he'll work with you to implement job stacking for yourself. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, are you ready to step out of the shadows of job insecurity and step into a world of career abundance? Then just click the link in the description of this episode, book a call with Rolf, and start walking the path of unleashing your earning potential with job stacking.
I'm getting a
Well,
headache.
just
just
adding
thinking
on
about-
Oop.
I was like, I'm getting a headache just thinking about Colombian bureaucracy. But you guys go on.
Just so I don't have kids or anything, but I have a couple friends now who have been here long enough where they've found a Colombian and they've had kids with them, and they're reaching the ages of going to school now. And so that's kind of been interesting to hear my buddy's process. And obviously the number one thing here is that there are good schools, but they're private schools. Like as a foreigner, you're not going to send your kids to a local Colombian school. And there's options like English schools, or there's some good ones that are also in Spanish, like private Spanish schools. Um, but yeah, I mean that varies very widely in price from what I've seen, like between Medellin and then friends who are actually teachers at those same types of private schools in Bogota. So it's going to be a lot cheaper than the U.S., but they're still talking in the $7,000 to $14,000 a year range per kid, depending on the
Don't you have to
grade.
pay some sort of like entrance fee? It's essentially a bribe to get your kid a spot in like the
I
top
think you have
schools.
to. Yeah, I think. Yeah, well, I think it's like an initiation fee, like you're joining like a club. Yeah, I think there's also a fee like that.
You pay like 2 months at the first month just to get in.
But that's obviously the thing that like everyone's gonna wonder. People love the quality of life in Colombia, and the food is good and the weather is great. But obviously, to be able to raise a kid, the number one thing is people want to give their kid a good education. So
Yeah, and the
it's kind of
definition of that.
encouraging to hear that. Yeah, it's kind of encouraging to hear that there are some really really good places in Medellin, in Bogota. I can't say that I know too much about Cali or like on the coast options there for people, but yeah, definitely in Medellin and Bogota.
And
Yeah,
there's
you're right.
something, yeah.
And
I think
Barranquilla
in
also,
general,
I
the
think.
education system
Yeah,
needs,
actually,
that schools need to look really different than they do right now. So you're paying a lot of money in these Colombian schools for this private education, but you're still getting that old school schooling. I'm at least 6 years away from having to make that decision, so I expect that education will look completely different by then.
I'm sure they
Yeah.
have like Montessori's and hippie
They're
schools and
around.
stuff. Yeah.
They're around.
I did
Yeah,
actually
mine.
forget there are good schools on the coast too. I totally forgot about Barranquilla. I know some Colombians who went to the international
Barranquilla.
schools there, and the schools are pretty good. And I know some teachers over there actually. So I totally forgot about that. But Barranquilla is also a semi decent option in Colombia for pretty good
Yes.
high quality like English, and they even have a school, a British school and a German school in Barranquilla. So for the Europeans.
There's some Montessori schools; those are really like up to the first couple grades. There's another thing, I've been looking into like homeschool. There's really no homeschool options in Colombia. It is illegal not to send your kids to school, but there is an option after middle school to validar. And so, what a lot of people around here do is they will go to school only on Saturdays. After the sixth grade, they'll go to school only on Saturdays, and then they will work on the farm or whatever. So once you get through like the sixth or seventh grade, you could try to figure out a modified homeschool, but it's actually illegal. And there's been some work. Some people, there's some local groups trying to fix that. But right now, homeschooling is illegal in Colombia.
I
I
didn't know
want to
What?
that.
say that
No shit.
raise a kid is difficult in Bogota, I think, because people work all day and the school is all day long. The kids wake up at least 5 a.m. maybe, or maybe 4 a.m. for going to school, and they go to home later at 3 p.m. for example. It's all day at the school. In Santa Marta, I think it's great. In Caribbean coast and Medellin probably is better to raise a kid to go to a school, better quality of life. I think Bogota is better for young and people single, I think. But for families, it's better traditional cities. I think Paisa culture is great. Costeños, people from, I don't know, Bucaramanga city is very traditional in their roles, in their family. So I think that's what I can say for raise a kid. Raise a kid is great, or I don't know how to say. Hacer familia en Colombia es fabuloso, pero en algunas ciudades Bucaramanga is very traditional. Boyacá is very traditional also. But
Bowtie,
Bogota
what's the,
is, I think, is
wh-
different. Yes.
I got a question for you. How, because I know like Colombian education's like very similar to the Estados, like it's like you pay for what you get. How big, how much of a difference is there in quality between like the top schools? Obviously, you've got the fucking presidential schools and that, like that's like a whole different
Okay.
thing. But like below that, what is there a big jump in quality between the price ranges? Because I know public
Okay,
schools is like complete shit. Like let's just be honest with that. Like public schools is like is not good.
okay, I got it. I think there is not so big difference with high schools like presidential and a little bit less. But for cheap school, I think education is bad. For example, for I don't know, uh, less than $50 month, I think is really bad. But for example, in my education was in Universidad del Rosario, is high university here is expensive. By
Yeah,
my school was not so expensive. I pay like $20 month, I think, so cheap. So, but at that time was really good. It's
yeah,
since I don't know, since 2005 maybe. At that time,
And
education was really good in all Colombia, I think.
and
But
is it
maybe
about
right
the
now,
education or the network? I'd love you to hear your opinion on that. Is it,
that
is the real value of the
that's
schooling that
that's
they're
the real
going
value
through
to
the
me.
education or the network that they're being plugged into?
I think the network is worth it. But yes, maybe at university the network is better that from the school. But from the school is better education than network. I don't know is that, for example, kids is better that study English since like I don't know 3 years old, because here, for example, in Barranquilla, I know schools bilingual like teach English that are really really good. O sea, really people
Hmm.
speak English like I don't know 14 years old and it's completely in English, the classes and all of that. But it's a little bit expensive for Colombian people. I
Yeah,
know, maybe, I don't know, 3 million pesos monthly. It's like a less than $1,000. But it's really good one school, for example. So yes,
okay, that's not as
school
expensive as
for
Medellin.
school is better education. I really wanted, for example, if one day I have a kid, I think it's worth it. Pay education since I don't know 4 years old. And for university, I don't believe in university here because it's a lot expensive. And I don't know, maybe in another country is better university for that.
Man, there's nothing sadder in Colombia, in my opinion, than like meeting a fucking someone who's like went to a very
Yes,
expensive university to wind up
yes,
with like a middle class job in Bogota. You're earning 2-3 million pesos a month, which is I know it's a lot of money here, but like you're living with your parents until you get married, and then you move to a
Yes.
tiny little box apartment with your wife in like Salita
you
there or
have
whatever.
debt,
That's like oh my god,
mucha
so
deuda.
sad.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes, it's better
So
to
just
start a
touch
business.
cost of living, like 3 million pesos in it, Líbano is a lot of money.
Ah,
But
like
in
yes,
Bogota, I
yes,
yes.
don't know how you could live
No,
on that. How would
no,
you
no,
live?
no.
That's terrible. Even as a
no.
single person, like how do you live?
But
That's
unfortunately,
how you
all the
gotta live with
professional
your
jobs
mom.
are in Bogota. All the professional jobs, the traditional professional jobs. Like, I
Yes,
mean, Bowtie's a smarter caliber. Like, he's got the online business going. Like, you're in a good place, my friend. But like, for the average Colombian who's like coming to Bogota for a professional job,
for work.
you
Yes,
know,
yes.
And for reference,
industrial
we're talking
engineering,
So
as
about
I'll,
they call it.
less than 800 US per month is three
Yeah,
yeah.
million pesos.
yeah, it's
I,
It's
I
a
will say guys, I have two Colombian employees in my content marketing business that's like separate from what I write about online. And also here in Medellin, I have a couple friends who run remote talent agencies. So I think a lot of the interest that people used to have in like the Philippines and Southeast Asia and talent there, which is
hmm
very affordable compared to what you would pay in the United States for talent and like high quality, very high quality work. A lot of that interest is coming to Latin America, especially if you work in the United States or Canada because of time zones and
mm,
proximity to the United States and Canada. So I'm seeing a lot of interest, not just in my own company, but in a lot of my American friends and entrepreneurs there who want to hire Colombians and Ecuadorians and Brazilians and Argentines really. They're really high on people's lists because they're still affordable and the quality is still there. But there are still obviously some things that need to happen in order for that to be like a huge switch from the Southeast Asia. English needs to get way better and skills just need to get better. But they're trending up. So I'm seeing that in this space, and people are starting to make a lot more money working online as an executive assistant or data analyst or software developer for European or American companies instead of working for a Colombian company in person in an office in Bogota.
Yes.
And the Colombians who have the best English, they've usually studied at an international school or they've dated a lot of foreigners.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes.
So where is the best school? Would it be in Bogota, I assume, not Medellin, at both the high school and college level?
No, define best. Like,
In college, I think it's better Bogota. The
It's
best
all
of the
Bogota.
best is in Bogota. Yes.
Like where the
It's expensive.
president's son goes and that kind of thing,
Exactly.
like the billionaire's son goes and stuff. That's
Yeah,
Bogota,
Exactly.
right?
university, you're talking Javeriana, Los Andes, even the National Universidad Nacional. The best ones are in Bogota. I don't even know what are the ones in Medellin. So it's like, and Bogota is a primate city. It's got 8, 9, 10 million people, depending where you draw the lines. Medellin is like super world class second city, but it is the second city to Bogota.
Yeah.
Yes. FIT, Universidad Antioquia, there are the really good ones in Medellin, but compared to Bogota, Bogota has the best university, the best schools for presidential
AFIT.
type. Exactly.
Everybody says AFIT is the best one in Medellin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, FIT.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a
And
really
then
good
my
one.
understanding is definitely for the primary schools, the high schools, and everything that Bogota is definitely better there. But I think the ones in Medellin are a little bit outside the city as well. Just like I think they're a little bit in El Oriente, like in Retiro
So
or somewhere around
we'll
there.
we'll switch it up from schools because it might get a little bit boring if we stick on that too long. I know we've been going a while now, guys. Maybe just hit on one or two more things. I'd love to ask Mr. Sam Miller. Now that he's pretty much fully moved to Mexico, I feel over the past couple of years. What are we thinking? Do you want to come back to Colombia? Are you missing Colombia? Are you fully a Mexican man now? What's the deal?
the pandemic really knocked me sideways, and not for any type of health condition. I'd built quite a large company. We served about 30,000 guests who were coming through Colombia with our short-term rental investments. That went sideways, unfortunately, due to ego and greed on a board of people who kind of had control of the company. So I've since then got knocked on my feet completely, and so I've found myself starting from scratch in a lot of ways, right? And when you're living in a different country, and when you've been living in a different country for a long time, how you do business, how you make money, how you live is it's kind of it's really up to you. There's different ways to do things. I've been exploring different ways to make my life kind of work and kind of embrace the opportunities that are happening right now. So I'm in Mexico. I'm doing what I did. Colombia to me remains like the most special place that I've come across on my travels. The Colombian dream for me, which is the finca in the
Mm-hmm.
campo, a place that you
Mm-hmm.
can leave the city, leave the matrix, and just be in a place in nature with people that you want to spend time with, is the epitome of dreams of all these different countries, right? So the Colombian dream for me is the dream. And I know it's a lot of other people's dreams too. And having, helped thousands of people kind of make these decisions, I'm starting to see the effect of like what happens when in mass we all go to a particular place. And right now, obviously, we're seeing this exodus happen in Canada and the US, and there's this migration happening, right? And we're all starting to kind of pick off different bases and decentralize our lifestyles a little bit. Um, and we look at the boomers who really had the purchasing power in the economy to live the way they wanted, and you'll see that they've got like 2 or 3 locations, right? They've got their home in Canada by the lake, and then they're picking up a penthouse in Medellin. Maybe they've got a place in Belize or like Ecuador or Panama or Costa Rica. So they're starting to pick 2 or 3 spots that they're kind of like spending their year. I think I'm going the same way. And a finca in Colombia for me is definitely one of those spots. When it comes to real estate, I've I've done business in Colombian real estate. Right now, I'm doing business in Mexico real estate. There's definitely a migration happening, and I'm seeing it's not really the gentrification. The gentrification we didn't really touch on here, but gentrification is, I think we all have access to the internet digital economy right now. So it's about educating people to get ready for that. But I'm seeing how when when as the northern countries migrate south, how it affects the cultures. So I'm really just kind of doing my thing. I'm being a lot more cautious than I used to about guiding a bunch of people to a place, when it's not done respectfully of the local culture, because there's something really special in Colombia, and I really hope it stays that way. And we've all seen how it changes in different spots, you know.
You're in
So
Tulum now or Playa? Where
Tulum,
do you
yeah,
live full
I'm in
time? You're in
Tulum,
Tulum.
and yeah,
Okay.
Tulum's a funny one, right? The whole world, like, there was a bunch of Tulum stuff that made it go viral, and so all these developers built condos everywhere, and it's the attention economy in full effect. Where we place our attention as a whole, a lot of shit gets developed, and you get a lot of condos and a lot of real estate gets developed when the attention goes to a place. And right now, there's a bunch of attention going to Colombia. But I'm also seeing what happens when the attention goes away. And there's downsides to that, right? It creates this economy that needs that attention to sustain itself. And I know Colombia can do that, but I'm just kind of, these are things that I'm just thinking about and working through personally as I kind of
Let,
pick my
let
own
me put
path.
it to Eddie and Nate regarding the Finca dream. 'Cause I think the other four guys have expressed that dream. For Eddie and Nate, is that the dream too? Get the Finca?
1,000%. 1,000%. I want my fucking finca with my tinto. I don't want just like a regular
Patilla.
finca. I want that traditional finca with, like, you know what I'm talking about, the colored rails, the
Oh yeah.
orange and blue. I want like a little
Little
piscinita. I want a
hummingbirds and
dog. I want a
flowers.
pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
View,
want
the
all that.
mountains, the barbecue,
Fuck yeah, yeah.
the Rowanas. You gotta have your own Rowana. You gotta have
Yes.
What's a
some animals,
Rowana?
maybe some ostriches.
What's a
The
Rowana?
Colombian poncho.
A
Colombian
poncho.
poncho.
Pick
Okay,
one up
okay,
in Boyacá. Road trip through
Yeah,
okay.
Boyacá. Visit Sean's
yeah.
family there. Pick up a Rowana there. Yeah,
What about
decking
Nate?
out your own
Nate, you want
finca.
the Finca, or Nate, you just good with the urban, the
No, I have to
streets?
say I'm not a finca guy. I grew up in Vermont, rural Vermont, New England life. So I feel like I did that for enough of my life. I guess I would kind of, I aspire to have multiple places, which I've kind of gotten to, and like to really. My dream is something like right in front of the ocean. That's really hard to find in Colombia, in like a really nice, blue, clear, like traditional style, Caribbean style ocean.
Yeah,
That's hard to find in Colombia, but maybe one day. I don't know.
yeah. Nate's killing it for the city because, yeah, the Colombian finca is great, but sometimes you do want to plug in. So Nate, like, what's your ideal setup? You're already a considerable way there, but like, what's your ideal, layout of places to live
Just in Colombia or the
Yeah,
world?
in Colombia, or I guess the world? But
I don't know. I'm
I
I'm
mean, you're
very
already
like
in Bogota, Medellin, right?
yeah. I chased an endless summer. That was like always my goal growing up in the mountains and the cold. So um, I mean, Medellin is an eternal spring, but having the ability to go between and choose between the climates, like Medellin and Bogota and Barranquilla or Santa Marta, which I also love, that's just such an amazing mix. Like cities, amazing weather and beaches when you want it.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Bit Refill. Bit Refill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information.
If you take it if you expand that a little bit globally, Colombia right now, like we're recording this in January, this is like peak season in Colombia by far. And then, it's really nice to go to spend some time in Europe in the summers during the nice months there, and maybe hop over to Asia a little bit. But definitely, I'm kind of all over the place.
And
That's
for
my dream.
reference, you've owned property in Barranquilla and in Bogota, so you understand a bit of the coast versus mountains dynamic.
Yep, and Medellin. Yep.
And Medellin. I think that actually is a cool perspective how you grew up in rural Vermont, which is kind of like the American dream version of it. And like maybe you're kind of tired of it. And that's partly why I brought this topic up was, maybe it sounds very romantic to have the finca, but there's downsides to it too, right? You're kind of in the middle of nowhere. Maybe there's a lot of bugs, stuff like that. So I'd be kind of curious, kind of how you guys think about it. Fun fact: Alex here has a Jimmy. He has one of those old school Jeep things, the classic Colombian one.
1979 Nissan Patrol. Yeah. And the greatest thing
Okay.
about this car, it cost me $3,000. I probably got $1,000 into it. But every time I go to fix it, I buy the guy a beer and he charges me 7,000 pesos. Every single
Amazing.
time I gotta fix something, tighten the bandas on the brakes, check anything, 7,000 pesos and a beer. And it's just easy to fix. They fix them forever. I love this car. The car culture in the campo is great. This car is probably $40,000 in the United States just because they don't have them, you know. But they're all over the place. The Willys, the old Jeeps, the
Did I call it a
Samurai.
Jimmy and it's a Willie? Yeah, my bad.
No,
Willis, yes.
it's a Patrol, the Nissan Patrol. But yeah, I
Okay.
mean they got a couple different brands are the main ones, but it's basically the old models that have proven to work and be easy to fix are still around and being fixed. So I mean I love that. That's one thing I love. I'm
Dude,
fixing the brake line today, and so but you just get under that car. Every part of I'm not a mechanic, and you go in these new cars, you got to get a computer engineering degree and a guy with a special software to figure it out. I understand all the car parts. It's all mechanical. There's no hydraulics practically. So that's fun for me. I don't know. That's not everybody's dream, but I'm living my dream, I got a chainsaw and a car that's older than me.
That I think that's a great part of living in I think in the campo, right? It's kind of like being old school is the fail safe, right? Like the most advanced military tech is like the carrier pigeon, right? Because if there's an EMP, everything gets wiped out. They still have the ability to send messages. The Colombian campo culture has a lot of that going on. If the world shuts down for whatever reason, the campo is going to be just fine, man.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you think about this, I mean, from the violence perspective, this is why it was so complicated. I almost feel like the U.S. might see some violence, hopefully not. But I almost feel like because Colombia is coming out of it, we're in like the safest place in the world. I grow my own firewood, I plant my own food, my car will not stop working, even if there's an EMP. And so, yeah, I really think you're right. We're gonna be okay.
Mhm.
Are any of you guys who are either investing in real estate or are planning on investing in real estate in Colombia? Are you guys concerned about the political instability in this country at all, or not really?
I'm I'm not. Well, my investment, maybe Sam's going to have a totally different perspective than I do, but mine was more so an emotional investment. I wanted to get residency, or at least a pathway to permanent residency and citizenship in Colombia. So I invested in the country, And I, of course, believe in the country and I want it to prosper, and I think it will. But I'm not super emotionally tied to where that peso might go from here. Um, but I hope. I'm optimistic. I really am optimistic.
I love Colombian. I'm definitely optimistic on it, extremely optimistic. But I will say I'm also a realist, and for a lot of people to be like super to go super big on Colombia and not be diversified is a little crazy. I'm a little bit too heavy on Colombia real estate right now, I feel like. And just to put things in perspective a little bit, like what just happened in Ecuador is what concerns me. When things go bad in South America, they seem to go bad extremely quickly. And so,
That's exactly my feeling,
like,
Nate. Yeah, that's exactly my
yeah,
feeling. Like if you asked me
yeah,
5 years,
it's just,
I'm not a political expert. If you asked me 5 years ago that Petro could be president, I'd be like, fuck no, that would never happen. And now he's president. I'm like, well, okay.
yeah, it's just something to be aware of. Like, you don't want to, you don't want to trick yourself into thinking that everything's great and it's always going to be great. Like, you should be aware of the realities of the situation as well. You know, if you go back further, like Colombia and Venezuela have switched roles essentially,
Yep.
where Colombia is now
Yes.
the one doing really well, and Venezuela is the one totally messed up. And that's a pretty like constant reminder for a lot of people in the region. Ecuador being the new reminder of that, like how fast things can go south. So it's
Panama.
something people really need to be aware of. But
Yeah.
right now, like things are okay. Things are
Yeah.
yeah.
I would definitely
I
not
will
go all in
say,
on Colombia for sure. I would definitely
yeah,
have a backup plan.
I will say, adding to both what you, Eddie, and Nate said, that, and I write about this on everywhere online, but the smart thing to do in 2024 and beyond is to have a residency in one country, your business in another, bank accounts in another, and citizenships in another, and diversifying your nationality stack. So I wouldn't bet on one single country, one single city in Colombia. I wouldn't bet on a single anything going forward. I just think that's a little bit ignorant to what we have seen happen in the last few years, and that kind of scares me. So if anybody's thinking about going all in on one country, I would just heavily advise not to,
And including the United States.
including the U.S.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
including yes.
Definitely.
I probably am most at risk of all of us. I mean, I know some of you guys have real estate, but I'm deep in the campo.
Yeah.
And so, just from my perspective, obviously, if I gotta run, I know how to run. But one thing that I have in my toolkit is that I have developed a relationship with my neighbors and the community. It's a very small town. A lot of times I joke, I'm not a gringo, I'm el gringo. So, like, people know me, and I've become a part of the community, not just by learning the language, but by participating in their lives, in their festivals, in everything. And so, that to me, I don't know what could happen. Obviously, the worst could happen, and got to get out of here. But I feel very strongly that I've done the best I can, and part of that is people investing in relationships with local people. Generally, in terms of like violence, those are local people. Those are local people, and a lot of times they were people with grudges that were taking advantage of the situation and putting on a mask. And you hear a lot of stories about that. And so, just remember, you when you come into another country, another culture, wherever you go, you're the guest, you're the invited person. So try to add value. So I that's what I try to do, protect myself. I feel like I'm a value adding member of the community. They'd be silly to chase me out of town. Now, could it happen? Sure, it could. And I know how to run. I know how to get out of here, but I know the way. But plan for that in terms of human relationships too.
Great take.
I just see Eddie listening to Alex and being like, "I love this guy."
Alex is living the dream I want to live, man.
Yeah.
Well,
get some
listen, guys, you're
horses.
all invited. Come visit me. DM me or whatever. DMs are open. If you're listening to this podcast, DM. I'm sure that these other guys would say the same. We're relationship guys. This is what we do. And so I know probably some of you have some services to help people. Like that. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you out, avoid the pitfalls because there are, most of the dangers from being stupid, but don't be stupid, and so you need a helping hand sometimes to figure this stuff out. Listening to these podcasts, these great podcasts from my Latin life.
Mm. Thank you, thank you. We'll get to wrapping up. I see some talk in the chat about citizenship, and maybe I could pose that to Nate because I think Nate, if you're willing to share, if not, just let me know. But I remember talking to you about this maybe a year ago. You're eligible for citizenship, and you were like, "I don't know if I'm gonna do it. The test seems too hard." What's up with that?
The test is still crazy. The test is extremely difficult. Like the four parts of the test, uh, yeah, they're all pretty difficult, except maybe the geographical section where you have to name like all the departamentos and stuff like that. But I'm in the process. I'm like 10 months into the process now, and it's just a slow process. A lot of sending documents and document verification, and I learned that this exam that you have to take, they only do it 2 times a year, so that kind of slows down the process depending on when you
Uh,
like all your stuff gets processed. So they do it in like May, and then they do it again in November. So I should be scheduled for the May exam. So I'm getting ready to really gear up and start studying for that.
have you taken the
Like,
exam before?
no, 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 no. I haven't gotten to the point where they've processed everything and scheduled me for it. They told me it takes about 12 to 14 months uh, for you to reach that point.
What happens if you
Wow,
fail the
just to
exam?
submit the application.
Can you do it again?
If you fail, you can take it again. It says that you're eligible to take it 2 times. And so I'm not exactly sure what happens if you fail the second time as well. But it's really difficult, especially for foreigners who also have to take another like section of the exam on the Spanish language. And so I spoke to a bunch of people who have taken it, and they actually failed it in November when they took it, so they have to retake it.
Shit.
Oh wow.
It's good intel.
Yeah. How many departments are in Colombia? Is it 43? Is it 43?
I think it's 32, and then
32.
Bogota,
32, yes. Exactly.
and then
32.
Bogota is a separate
How many
distrito.
how many Sam been to?
Oh, I haven't even counted, man. I'm one of those guys. There's Chris Bell has been to everyone. He's a great bird watcher. He'll show you all of the most amazing birds. Colombia having one of the most biodiverse amount of animals per square meter. Beautiful for that. There's some deep ones that I haven't been to that you got to get by plane. Most of the ones that you can reach by motorbike I've done. But I still want to get to Isla Gorgona. I want to check out that old
Oh, that's
prison
great.
island with whale
Mm.
sharks and monkeys. And then deep into the Chiribiqueque. Nate, you got me on this one?
Chiribiqueque.
Chiribiqueque? Yeah.
Chiribiquete.
Cacique,
Chiribiquete. Yeah, I got to go visit that one too.
you gotta go check out Arauca. We're missing out.
Oh, Arauca's fun. But yeah,
Good stuff.
Boyacá road trip, definitely into Santander, San Hill, a lot of good
Oh,
fun.
that's
And
great.
then
Yes.
I mean, you especially if you're traveling by motorbike, you really can't miss. The only road is the Ruta del Sol, which is from Bucaramanga to like Santa Marta. It's hot and straight, and there are zero curves. So if you're on a motorbike, it's extremely uncomfortable. But everywhere else in Colombia is so much fun on a motorbike. If you're gonna get around, I do recommend that for getting around.
Nice.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We'll get to wrapping up. I we'll have to do a round two at some point, but thank you guys for all you guys for sticking around the whole basically 2 hours. So really appreciate all your guys' time and your expertise, most importantly. Some true Colombia enthusiasts here on the podcast. Um, would love to give you guys each maybe a little opportunity to say any last words, something like that before we take off.
I don't really have anything to say other than just like come here, enjoy it, learn Spanish, be open minded. You know, be street like develop your streets. Like don't come here like an idiot. Don't be ignorant. And just have fun. You know, really that's pretty much what I have to say about Colombia. I love it. Oh, I will say one thing because I'm in Cali. I feel that people overlook Cali for whatever reason. I don't know why. I think it's because Bogota, Medellin is such they're so prominent. If you like cities, if you want city culture, I highly recommend you come to Cali. Um, in my opinion, it's the best of the three of like the three large principal cities.
Ooh.
It's the one that gets overlooked the most. So I like and I was actually speaking to Ian. Unfortunately, he wasn't on the call because he agrees with me. It's the one city that really hasn't changed much in the last 10 years, and I think that's a cool thing. It's still very Colombian. One thing we didn't touch upon on this call, we didn't get around to it, which is like the gentrification in Medellin, Bogota. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are, but I don't. It's something I haven't. I think it's kind of like a downside, but Cali, it's still pretty Colombian. So it's still. I don't know if it's going to get gentrified at some point. I still think it's still a few years away, but like it's still a very very Colombian city. So highly recommend if you have if you speak a little bit of Spanish, come to Cali. Don't overlook it.
I definitely second it.
Yeah,
That's great.
I actually feel that a lot of gringos don't talk about Cali because they don't want other gringos coming to Cali. That's my gut feeling. But
I think you're very right with that as well, though.
All right, I'm going
Because
to wrap
I
up
thought we
with
were going to
this.
settle the Bogota versus Medellin conversation finally. Like to have a final decision whether it's Bogota or Medellin, and it seems like the answer
Yeah,
is
sure. Hit
Cali.
us. Yeah, let's everyone kind of conclusively decide what's the better city.
man, I can't say Medellin because I've never lived there, so I'm biased. I lived in Bogota for 10 years. Bogota for
It
me.
depends what you want. It depends what you're
Yeah.
looking for.
It depends on what
Yes,
stage of
absolutely.
life you're in,
Yes, Sam nailed it.
on
That's
your
exactly
budget.
it.
What are you trying to do? What
Yeah.
weather do you like? Choose your own weather. Like, so
Let
it's
me
like for you right now, what's the best city for you right now is probably the best question
Yes.
or a better question.
I'm getting ojos from my wife here. Let me wrap up with this anecdote. Something Sean said really stuck with me. His family came and they vomited and they fell in love and they had a great time. And I brought some family members here and we took them from Bogota to Líbano, and there's this section of the road, the Curvas de Cambao, and they all were pidiendo bolsa, 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 and they were throwing up into it. And they tell that story with such love, with such they had the greatest time of their lives. And so just this country is it's not like a postcard and in just a beach house. It is like the place where you can go and throw your guts out, just throw up crazy and have the best time and never
Said,
forget it.
come
Like it's
visit,
got
go to the
both.
main cities,
It's
but
more
also get out.
than we
Go
can
to the
explain
go
to
to
you in
all
this
the
call.
hidden
So
gems around the
I'm with
country.
I'm with
Go
Eddie.
see what
Like have an
real
open
Colombia
mind,
looks like,
enjoy
because
it,
you're
be
gonna have
safe.
an even more fun
Do your
time.
research, but
I
don't
think
know
I'll
that,
wrap up with this:
papaya.
that I
But
think
just
Colombia is the
come
country
visit,
that you
have
are
have a
not going to be
fun
able to
time
go
here.
home without hundreds of stories to be able to tell all your friends and family about. You're going to have something come up, something about your trip that you're going to go home and be able to tell your grandkids about for years. Yeah.
Sure.
Viva Colombia, puta. Viva Bolívar, carajo.
Exactly, yes. I want to
All right.
say that people need
Go ahead.
to visit Bucaramanga, Santander, and Boyacá. They are really great. They, they are cities that are safe, really safe. Son ciudades seguras. No creo que los estafen. And vengan a Colombia y yo siento que no tienen mucho que perder si no buscan sexo ni prostitutas, la verdad. Es un país acogedor. La van a pasar bien. Es la verdad. Y van a disfrutar mucho. So, that's it, man. Yes.
If you're a younger guy, you want to kind of work, you want to date, you want nightlife, I gotta say Bogota is the best city. If you're a little bit older, you're starting to kind of develop in your career. It's all about networking, relationships. Medellin right now, especially as like this digital nomad revolution is happening, is an amazing place to connect with other 30-something-year-old guys who are building businesses online. Incredible place for that. If you're in your 40, I mean, if you're in your like 40s, 50s, 60s, I mean, I'd be looking around the Coffee Triangle for a nice little finca, a nice place to settle down, be in nature, find a place. So that's your Armenia, your Pereira, maybe your Manizales, things like that. And some secret spots that we're not mentioning, but then also there's also like Santa Marta I think is one of the more underrated kind of base camps to that whole region, the Minca, the Palomino, the
Sierra
Guajira. I
Nevada.
think that whole region, the Sierra Nevada, that place for me is so magical. It's one of the most amazing places to at least get to know. It's pretty wild, or a little bit too wild to try and stay productive and if you're in grind mode, you don't want to be in that type of place. If you want to be in and just enjoy an adventure and travel mode, go to Santa Marta, explore everything to the east from the Sierra Nevada, ice-capped mountaintops to the warm Caribbean waters, the Tirona jungles, your Guajira desert, all of that. Go out and have adventures and fun there. So that's what I'd kind of wrap up with. Enjoy.
Perfect, guys. And for the listeners, there's like a chat functionality where we're recording, and they're like naming cities not to tell anyone. So the only way you're gonna get that is by coming to Colombia.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's
But
awesome.
no, seriously, guys, I'm super appreciative and grateful for everyone on this call and the community that we've built up and the connections that everyone's made. And you guys really make me want to come back to Colombia and hang out with all you guys. But I'm super grateful for the community that we've built up here, and wish you guys all a good 2024. Thanks for joining us. Remember, stick around just a second when we turn off the recording, just so the audio uploads. Um, but yeah, so this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast, the Colombia Roundtable. Thank you to Sean Hall, Alex EcoInstant, James Freedom Files, BowtiedColombia, Eddy Quan, Jammaster Nate, Sam Miller